Welcome back to the show where we talk about law enforcement recruiting, the trends and the tips each and every week. And I've got our steady guest on here, Doug Larsen. He's a co-owner of Safeguard Recruiting. They're the only company that's throwing real candidates, real applicants to these agencies. He's provided thousands to agencies across the country. He is fixing law enforcement recruiting. And this week, Doug, man, it's been a busy week. What's been going on over at Safeguard?
Yeah, it's been a busy week with a lot of our clients on board. We're helping them get new candidates in all the time, helping them refine their processes on how they recruit them in and get more numbers in, more conversions to applicants, and get them through the process, the pipeline to get hired.
Now, if you were to barrel down one of the biggest pain points, I know you're always talking about pain points because it's a long hiring process, and the more efficient and quicker you can make that, the more people get through. If you were to barrel down this into the biggest issue you can think of that agencies should be thinking about, what do you think that would be? As far as I know, each week you hear different stories, right? So what is that to you this week?
Yeah, this week I want to talk about kind of what the role of a recruiter is and how they bring somebody on board, the communication process that's necessary, and the work that goes into that to get somebody to not go from interest in your department to an actual application.
Yeah, that to me is something I've always talked about. I know you do as well. Traditional law enforcement recruiting isn't like traditional recruiting in the private sector. Let's try to talk the difference here. So, because when the recruiting, we call this so-called a recruiting crisis, which I know you agree with me, there's not a recruiting crisis. There's probably a crisis in other areas, but plenty of people want to do this job. You guys prove this each and every week with your campaigns. People are coming in droves to work for these departments. But how we view recruiting is different than the private sector is a very competitive world in the private sector in recruiting. So what's that difference?
Yeah, there's kind of a big difference. Private sector can turn around and hire immediately, whereas in law enforcement, we take a little bit of time. We've got background checks, we've got physical tests, we've got written tests, we've got some areas that have to be satisfied to be able to bring somebody on board. And that's a process that somebody that's not growing up in a law enforcement family, isn't in law enforcement, they don't understand. And it's a long process where people they don't know they're going to get that job offer coming, and so they'll take something that comes a little quicker.
Well, I commanded a recruiting unit for a handful of years. And as a commander, you're not doing the recruiting, but you're overseeing it. And so I didn't know a lot about it at the time. This is several years ago. But this is what I saw recruiters do traditionally in my agency and many other agencies, is their main role, they went to some job fairs and they answered questions, but their main role is the application would come in and they would take that application and work them through the process. The recruiters and the background investigators worked hand in hand. Sometimes they were the same people. They would show up for testing night and they would facilitate the testing. These were the recruiters or backgrounds or both. But the main bulk of their work day to day was application forward. But when we talk about recruiting, that's before the application. Are you finding a tough transition in a world now where we have to actually recruit, where our profession is having a difficult time getting the mindset around before application?
Yeah, we're seeing this, and you hit it right on the head there, Travis. There's a lot of departments and as we come up through law enforcement, we didn't have to recruit. There was always a steady stream of people coming through the door, and we would just take those applications. And from there, once they apply, it's more of a mentoring. I'm going to get you through and all the processes until you get hired. Recruiting's a different game, and it's a different animal in this day and age where everybody has a phone, expects information right now. They expect communication. They expect it in different formats. And so a recruiter is actually someone that needs to actively be involved in bringing people into the department. So not only are we getting them interested in the department, but once they show interest, what are all the steps we're taking to make sure that engagement stays fresh, they stay engaged with us, wanting to move further along in the process, and they understand what that process is from start to finish. So there's somebody there that's answering their questions and communicating with them. So if they have a concern about their background, that those questions can be answered up front and they don't freeze on the application or hold off putting it in. They may not know how to prepare for the physical test or the written test. There's a lot of stress for a candidate to come into law enforcement and get into this process with a lot of unknowns. So the recruiter really is somebody that should be reaching out a lot, having these dialogues, making sure somebody is staying engaged with the process until we can get that person to apply, and then we start moving them through the next steps.
Well, we're talking about two specific jobs here. So the bulk of the traditional law enforcement recruiter is application through that process. Here's when your test is. Here's when your psychological test is. Here's when your interview is. And it's keeping that communication going and making sure they're showing up and have those questions answered. It's a whole nother job from trying to attract interested candidates to the application. I would say that may be where we may be failing. Like, it's a full-time job to be that mentor, like we just described, Doug. But it's another full-time job to be the recruiter on the front end. But what we're expecting from these recruiters is to be able to do both of those, right? And so I know you've seen that in your clients, and in fact, most of your clients that have been successful, they've had to bring in additional people for that piece. Or if they don't bring in additional people for that piece, they leave that piece out, and that really hurts the transition from candidate to applicant. So, what do leaders out there in law enforcement need to understand when it comes to that? Because we're used to in our profession, Doug, of throwing money at something and the problem's fixed, whatever it is, right? Oh, I need a real-time crime center. Throw some money at it. Oh, it's fixed. Man, this is a whole new mindset, whole new philosophy. But if they can figure this out, it fixes it. You guys show that every week.
Exactly. They can fix it. And looking at law enforcement, having a background in law enforcement, one thing I'm understanding is there's not a lot of places for people that get in this recruiting role to go out and grab training and learn how to actually recruit for their departments in this new age. There are plenty of people that want to be involved, but we see a lot of departments from interest to actual candidate to application. There's a big drop off, and there's some small things you can do in there communication wise, and make sure your communication is not only on point, because the message needs to be clear and convey your culture and be inviting to want to be part of your department. But let's not have these long delays in communication, because that hurts you with the candidate. These delays in communication, they interpret that many times as a lack of interest on the department's part, and then they start moving somewhere else. We want to pull them in, get them a part of our department right away. We want to have a lot of communication and the right communication. And that's one thing Safeguard does. We offer training on this to help with the communication cadence, how it should go. And we also, what we found to be very effective is we've taken over that role for a number of departments. So we will actually take that candidate, help with the recruiting process, the whole nurturing them all the way through until they do fill the application out. And then the traditional role that law enforcement recruiters used to, application on, they take that and move the candidate further along until they actually get them hired.
Yeah, I would say from talking to some of your clients is they're very comfortable in that traditional role. How many more applications can I get? Work them through the process. But when you start talking to them about prior to applications, that's kind of a recruiter's a high expertise skill. Most law enforcement recruiters aren't in there for a long time. There's not any training available. You obviously provided that training. We'll give you that link in the show notes. But you recognize this, and you just mentioned it. You set up an automatic nurturing system to basically get them to apply, where if an agency can't dedicate more resources to that, because I'm telling you, they have to. Not only do they have to dedicate more resources, that's a different skill set to know what the emails need to say, when the emails go out, when the phone calls need to be made to get them to apply and get in that process. So you've set this up for them as an add-on feature where it can just be automatic. Discuss that a little bit further.
Yeah, we've set that up. Even with our digital campaigns, we already handle a bunch of the touch points until it could go to the recruiter. But a lot of departments don't have the manpower, the capacity to take this, or even the skill set to take this role on. So we have an automatic nurturing system that will send these messages out, keeping engagement with the candidate and move them along the process to application. And you got to look at this a lot as this is a recruiting role, it's a sales role. It's kind of the same thing. You're building your pipeline, you're working your pipeline, you're nurturing your pipeline until you actually get the sell. But the sell is getting the application, getting the person ready to hire. And it's not of any fault of the people in law enforcement. People get in the recruiter role, and it's not the skill set we all came into law enforcement for, right? And we've talked about this before. Nobody got into law enforcement because they wanted to be the recruiter, but there's still not a whole lot of training out there to help people advance to the new way of talking to people, communicating with people, and keeping them engaged, because it is so competitive. They can get on their phone and now they're automatically going in a different direction with their job hire. And so we need to stay in contact.
I love the detail of it, because you customize your emails to the agency, and you're not writing, Doug. You're using copyright experts because once again, this is a high level skill, how emails are written, the cadence of them. You've actually got some consultants you're working with, and they will write these emails, put it in an automatic system that sends those out on a regular basis. And everybody listening to this is aware of that. You know, you bought something offline, and all of a sudden you start getting these different cadence emails. Some are better than others, but when you guys have pioneered this for the profession, because you're seeing a high conversion rate comes from that system, are you not?
Oh, exactly. The conversion rate from initial interest in your department to filling out the application and moving along in the process, it can go anywhere from a 3 times to almost a 6 times what you were getting in traditional recruiting law enforcement's always done. So if we add some features, add some enhancements, add some little touches to it, and you're exactly right. The messaging needs to be on point also for each step of the way. It needs to be written in a way that keeps the candidate engaged and moving along the process.
Well, man, we'll cover this in future shows. I think it's dynamic. It's the answer. People listening, just go to the website, SAFEGUARDRECRUITING.com. It tells you a lot about that. You guys will give them a free consultation. You'll evaluate their processes. You don't need $1 to do that. You'll be glad to talk to anybody. If you want to go further into what Doug just talked about, you guys just rolled out a class. It's a few hours of video with a bunch of content in there, and you have a bunch of bonus material. I mean, it's several hours of material. If you can get through that, man, you are going to be about as an expert as you can be. You guys are pretty much giving away what's in your head. So check that out at SAFEGUARDRECRUITING.com. But before we get out of here, Doug, thanks for being here, is a client success story. You told me that you had a client this week that when they came to you and they started working that front end, their applications doubled on a very small campaign, by the way. Like, they got immediately doubled the applications they got in. It was more than the guy had gotten in over 5 years in a month.
Yeah, they were very excited about it. This department they're a great model for us too. They sat down, they went through a bunch of our training before they started a campaign with us. They instituted a lot of that training. They got it in motion. They got recruiters dedicated to a process that understood it, and very impressive. They went to double applications, and they are doing a great job with this. They're very happy with the results, and double the applications, Travis. I'm not even willing to stop there. I think we can improve on that.
Oh yeah. Listen, everybody wants to get in. We've talked about this before. Everybody wants to talk about, oh, there's this crisis, there's this recruiting issue. And you guys are proving each and every week, Doug, that that's just nonsense. So what we need people to do is have an open mind about it. Give you guys a call. You guys are former law enforcement. You're not trying to sell a bunch of stuff. You're just trying to tell them the way it is. That's why we do these shows every week, to talk to people. Enter in a dialogue. Doug will give you his time, and he'll tell you exactly what's going on. And then it's your choice. But this can be solved no matter where you are. You guys have clients from the top 5 cities in America to some of the smallest departments you can think of. They're all over the map. So great job, man. And I can't wait to talk to you next week about it.
Yeah, thank you. We try and have a package that can help everybody from big to small and get the right success. But we'll even just consult and kind of help tune your program up if you need it. Just give us a call.
Man, it's awesome. Recruiter v. Mentor. I love the concept. Great information, Doug. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, we'll see you. Thank you.